Hi everybody, my name is Juan. I am just one reader and I am here to do one of my favorite, if not my favorite video to do every year. And that is my top 10 books of the year. But today I will not really be giving my top 10, but my honorable mentions for 2016. Looking back and reflecting on my reading year on 2016, I feel extremely satisfied and really proud of myself because, on the one hand, I didn't really read as many books as I would have wanted to. I'm used to always completing my Goodreads reading goal, and this year I did not succeed. My goal was reading 60 or 70 books, and I only read, and I say only like it's some kind of under accomplishment when it really is a big accomplishment. I read, I think 43 or 44 books, and the year is still going. It's not over yet. So I feel like maybe I can still read maybe 45, even 50 books. But regardless, I think regardless of the amount and the quantity of books, I feel this book has been this year has been such a great reading year for me. I feel incredibly satisfied and proud because I have managed, not only have I managed to read in a year that has been so complicated and so busy for me. I've been extremely busy and I've had to really be disciplined in order to read for pleasure. But I've managed to do that, so I feel incredibly happy and satisfied. But um, I also feel incredibly happy with some of the books that I've read. This year, in comparison to last year, this year has been maybe a year of less quantity of books, but much better quality. I feel like I've grown as a reader a lot. I've started to think more critically, and a lot of that has been because of you guys and BookTube and great BookTubers that have opened up my mind, and this booktube thing, getting to know some people here that have really made me see literature and see books in a completely different light. And I really cannot thank you guys enough because of your channels and your input. It has really transformed me as a reader and as a person. So sincerely, I say thank you. And without any further ado, these are my honorable mentions for 2016. So these are 7 books that did not quite get the rating, the necessary rating for being in my top 10 books, which it's a video that will be coming up probably in the remainder of December. So, these are books that I completely adored. I absolutely would recommend them. But for some reason or another, they were just not as fantastic as the other books that will be on my top 10. So the first one I don't have a physical copy of because I read it on my Kindle, and that is The Arrival of Missives by Aaliyah Whiteley. This is a very weird, strange, bizarre novella. It is beautifully written. Like, seriously, every sentence is so lush and so poetically written. It's beautiful. It's a story that for some reason, I always compare it to the movie The Witch because it just has this kind of secluded, isolated, very atmospheric feel to it. It is extremely weird. We follow some very interesting characters, and it's the perfect book to go into not knowing anything about it because it will surprise you and it will unsettle the reader. So, The Arrival of Missives by Aaliyah Whiteley. Then after that, I have 6 books that I do have physical copies of. The first one is The Enchanted by Renee Denfeld. This is a book that I read at the beginning of the year, and it has stuck with me very much. It is surprisingly affected me, and just like the rest of the books in this list, it is beautifully written, it is very poignant and harrowing. It's a story of death and life and the beauty in both. I really don't want to say anything really about the plot. it can feel sometimes like it's magical realism, but I didn't really see the magical realism in it. I always thought it was more of a human suffering type of read. And I just loved it. And this book takes place in a prison, and for a semester I worked at a prison. When I was studying psychology, I worked as a therapist, kind of in the in the psychiatric wing of of a prison here in Mexico City. So that this book just made me connect back with that experience, and yeah, I love this book. The next honorable mention is a children's book, and it's really one of the only children's books that I read this year, and I was blown away by it. And this is The 13 Clocks by James Thurber. This is allegedly Neil Gaiman's favorite book, and I can definitely see why. This book is just like Neil Gaiman. It's wacky, it's weird, it's wonderful, it has beautiful language, it plays with language. It's that type of book that has rhymes and limericks and wordplay, and it's wonderful. It is illustrated, and it's a beautiful book and a wonderful thing to read out loud, whether it be to yourself or to someone else. It's a great gift for a child. It's a wonderful book, The 13 Clocks. The next one is very different from the last one, and this is True Grit by Charles Portis. I loved reading this book because it was something very much out of my comfort zone. This is a Western classic novel. And when I say classic, I mean that it's one of those like very literary westerns, and I loved it. I didn't really think I would love it, but it was just such a delightful experience because if you see, I have a lot of post-its here, annotations. This was a delicious book to analyze and nitpick, and I loved it. I loved reading it like this. It was just a great opportunity for thinking critically and to really analyze every paragraph. It's a short book, very beautifully written, and with a lot of themes and with a lot of meat. So I would recommend True Grit by Charles Portis if you're looking for something that is maybe out of your comfort zone, but that focuses so much on the themes and on character instead of plot. And yeah, this book was great. Moving on. I have Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. This is probably the creepiest, or one of the creepiest books that I read this year. Jeff Vandermeer writes so poetically and so beautifully. He manages to create, particularly at the end of the book, he manages to create these sensations, physical sensations in the reader, that I started feeling like I was hallucinating. The language is so poetic and so vivid and evocative that it creates this weird images and feelings in the reader that you just feel so unsettled. And this book is science fiction, but it is so literary that I think it's just a weird crossover mix, genre bending creation. I loved it. I would recommend this to anyone who wants to read something disturbing and discomforting. It is one of those books that it oozes weirdness. It oozes... it's indescribable, and I really recommend it, obviously. I have two more honorable mentions, and I think I'm gonna leave my favorite one for last. And so I'm gonna talk first about The Crimson Petal and the White. This is a huge historical novel by Michel Faber. It is set in London in Victorian times, and I love reading that kind of setting. Is really appealing to me. And the thing that I loved the most about this book was the way that it is the narrative style that it has. Basically, what Michel Faber does in here is he creates a narrator that takes you, the reader, hand in hand through the streets of London, and he just never lets you go. He's like a tour guide of the city, and he shows you around, and he shows you the story and the characters, and the characters are something, by the way, that I completely loved about this book. I think Michel Faber created some really interesting, complex, and three-dimensional, layered characters. This book, if you don't know, is it focuses on this prostitute going by the name of Sugar. And this book is really kind of her attempt to climb the social ladder in London. And yeah, just I would recommend this book if you enjoy London. I think this is a great book for people who want to see really interesting characters, and most particularly an interesting narrative voice. Also, this is a great historical fiction piece for people who don't typically read historical fiction, like myself, because I never read historical fiction. It's not my cup of tea, and this one I just gobbled it up. And even if this book is huge, because it is, I think, 900 pages long, I read it in 1 week. So if I could do it, everyone could do it. And my last honorable mention, and I am kind of surprised that this book didn't really get into my top 10, my actual top 10 list of the year. This book was wonderful, and I'm still thinking of it, but for some reason I'm still hesitant to include it in my top 10. And this is the new and improved Romi Fudge by Julia Elliott. This book follows a really interesting character by the name of Romi Fudge, and it's also the story of his transformation. What I loved the most about this book, and the reason that I said that this is my favorite book in these honorable mentions, is that the way that Julia Elliott writes it's just captivating. It's really unique, and I think that's the thing with this book. It is absolutely unique. I cannot think of another book that has the same feel or that has similar narrative style. She paints the world the way that Romi Fudge sees it, and as a reader, you experience the world through the protagonist's eyes, and the protagonist is always changing. So the vision that he has of the world and of everything is also changing constantly, and you as a reader get to experience all that. Yeah, I loved reading this book. It was a complete delight. Even if the story, the plot itself, was maybe not my favorite or my particular cup of tea, I loved reading this, and I would read it again, and I would love to. I think this is a great book to gift, because it sounds really wacky. If you read the back, it sounds wacky, and it sounds, maybe for some people it would sound very unappealing, like taxidermist, a big feral hog. It just doesn't sound appealing, but when you read it, it becomes a delicious nightmare dream kind of creation. So guys, those were my honorable mentions for the year 2016. I loved these books, and I loved sharing them with you. Stay tuned, because later on in December you will see here on my channel my top 10 favorite books of 2016, and oh my god, do I have some good ones.